My name is Hazel Parker, I'm 32 and living in Boston. Christmas was supposed to be normal this year at my parents' Connecticut home, but then my brother James arrived. He's the one who's always expected me to drop everything and watch his kids since they were born. This time, something was different. He walked in clutching a leather-bound planner, something I'd never seen him carry before. The pit in my stomach deepened when I caught him glancing between it and me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had family take advantage of your kindness too. James is 4 years younger than me, which somehow translated into my becoming his built-in babysitter from the moment I turned 12. Our parents both worked demanding jobs, Dad as a hospital administrator and Mom as a real estate agent with unpredictable hours. When James needed supervision, I was the obvious solution. "Hazel, you're so responsible," Mom would say, her tone making it clear this wasn't just praise but an expectation to live up to. "Your brother needs you." I still remember the first major event I missed because of this arrangement. Ashley Miller's 13th birthday party at the local skating rink, the social event of 7th grade. I had my outfit planned for weeks, practiced skating every day after school, and even saved my allowance to buy Ashley the perfect gift, a charm bracelet I'd spotted at the mall. The night before the party, Mom announced she had an unexpected open house and Dad was covering for a colleague at the hospital. "You'll need to watch James tomorrow," she said, barely looking up from her paperwork. "He has a cold, so he can't go to the Thompsons like we planned." I remember standing in the kitchen, my stomach dropping. "But Mom, I have Ashley's party. I've been talking about it for weeks." "Honey, this is what family does. We help each other." Her expression softened momentarily. "James needs you. You wouldn't want him to be alone when he's sick, would you?" That became the script for the next 20 years of my life. James needed me. Family helps family. My needs, plans, and aspirations were secondary. I'd been accepted to Rhode Island School of Design for a BFA in painting, my dream since I could hold a brush. But when James was 16 and going through what my parents called a phase, involving questionable friends and declining grades, they asked if I'd consider community college locally just for a year or two to help keep an eye on him. "He looks up to you, Hazel," Dad said. "You're the only one who can get through to him." 1 year became 2, then 3. By the time James straightened out and headed to college himself, I'd abandoned my art school dreams and settled for a practical degree in graphic design from the State University. I built a decent career working for a marketing agency in Boston, but there's always been a hollow ache when I think about the paintings I might have created. As adults, the pattern continued with different packaging. James married Stephanie right after college, and within 2 years, they had Emma, now 7. Liam followed 2 years later. From the moment Emma was born, James and my parents operated under the assumption that my weekends, holidays, and vacation time were available resources for childcare. "You're so good with them, Hazel," Stephanie would say, seeming genuinely grateful in a way James never was. "They adore their Aunt Hazel." I do adore them back. Emma with her serious brown eyes and endless questions about how things work. Liam with his wild energy and surprising moments of tenderness. But loving my niece and nephew doesn't erase the resentment that's built over years of canceled dates, missed exhibitions, and postponed vacations because James really needs your help this weekend. 3 significant relationships ended because of my inability to prioritize them over my family's demands. Greg, who finally walked away after I missed his sister's wedding to take care of the kids when James and Stephanie had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attend a friend's destination vow renewal. Alicia, who tried to understand but eventually said, "I can't be with someone who doesn't believe they deserve their own life." And most recently Michael, who simply asked, "Do you ever plan to put yourself first?" It was that question that finally pushed me into therapy 6 months ago. Dr. Winters helped me recognize the deeply rooted patterns in our family dynamic. I wasn't just helping out, I was enabling James's expectation that his priorities automatically outranked mine. I was also enabling my parents' uneven distribution of family responsibilities. Boundaries aren't selfish, Dr. Winters reminded me in our session just before Christmas. They're necessary for healthy relationships. I drove to my parents' house this Christmas with a new resolve. I would be loving but firm. I would enjoy time with my family, especially my niece and nephew, but I wouldn't agree to any more one-sided arrangements. I had even rehearsed some phrases. I'm not available that weekend. That doesn't work with my schedule. I have other commitments. Simple sentences that shouldn't feel revolutionary but somehow did. The closer I got to Connecticut, the more my stomach knotted. I loved my family, but underneath the holiday anticipation was 20 years of resentment and fear. Would I have the courage to break our family pattern? Would they even recognize me if I wasn't the Hazel who always said yes? I arrived at my parents' colonial-style home in Fairfield County around noon on Christmas Eve. The 2-hour drive from Boston had been peaceful, my car filled with carefully wrapped presents and the scent of gingerbread cookies I'd baked to contribute to the holiday spread. Snow dusted the perfectly maintained lawns of my parents' neighborhood, and familiar holiday decorations adorned nearly every house. The front door opened before I could ring the bell, and my mother appeared with her arms outstretched. At 62, Diane Parker still maintained the polished appearance of the successful real estate agent she'd been for 30 years, her silver-streaked dark hair cut in a stylish bob. "Hazel! You're right on time," she exclaimed, embracing me. "Your father just built a fire in the living room." Dad emerged from behind her, tall and slightly stooped now at 65, his glasses perched on his nose and holiday sweater already in place. "There's my girl," he said warmly, giving me a bear hug. For a moment, wrapped in their affection, I could forget the complicated emotions I'd been processing in therapy. This was still home, these were still my parents, and underneath everything, there was love. "James and Stephanie aren't coming until around 4, Mom explained as she helped me bring my bags and presents inside. "Emma has a Christmas pageant at their church this afternoon." I felt a wash of relief. A few hours of peace before navigating the more challenging family dynamics would be welcome. The house looked like a holiday magazine spread, which was typical of my mother's entertaining style. A 9-foot tree sparkled in the corner of the living room, laden with our family's collection of ornaments. Garlands draped the staircase and mantel, and holiday-scented candles filled the air with cinnamon and pine. I spent the afternoon helping Mom finish preparing the Christmas Eve dinner while Dad watched football and occasionally wandered in to sample whatever was available. It felt easy, almost like stepping back in time to before the weight of family expectations had become so heavy. "How's work going?" Mom asked as we rolled out pastry for dessert. "Actually, really good," I replied, realizing I hadn't shared my recent professional news. "I was promoted to creative director last month." Mom stopped and looked at me with genuine pride. "Hazel, that's wonderful. Why didn't you tell us?" I shrugged, realizing how accustomed I'd become to minimizing my achievements around my family. "It's been busy. And I wanted to share the news in person." She wiped her hands and hugged me again. "We should celebrate tonight. I have that nice champagne I was saving." It was a small moment, but it reminded me that beneath the patterns that had frustrated me, my parents did value my success and happiness. It made what I needed to do, establishing healthier boundaries, both more important and more difficult. At exactly 4:15 p.m., the sound of car doors slamming announced James's family's arrival. Moments later, the front door burst open, and Emma and Liam tumbled in amid a flurry of excitement, winter coats, and chatter. "Aunt Hazel," they cried almost in unison, rushing toward me with the unrestrained enthusiasm only children can genuinely express. I knelt to their level, receiving their hugs with equal fervor. Emma, with her dark curls escaping from a red knit hat, immediately began telling me about her role as a shepherd in the pageant. Liam, his cheeks still rosy from the cold, thrust a crumpled paper ornament into my hands. "I made this for you at school," he announced proudly. Stephanie followed, looking exhausted but smiling. At 34, she maintained a kind of harried beauty, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and circles under her eyes suggesting the marathon of parenting two young children while working full-time as a pediatric nurse. "Merry Christmas, Hazel," she said, giving me a genuine hug. "It's so good to see you." James entered last, carrying several shopping bags and already glancing toward the living room where the sound of the football game could be heard. My younger brother had grown into a man who physically resembled our father, tall and broad-shouldered, but retained a boyish quality in his face that had always helped him charm his way out of trouble. "Hey, sis," he said casually, as if we'd seen each other last week instead of 4 months ago at Labor Day. He deposited the shopping bags by the tree and immediately headed toward the living room. "Dad watching the Patriots?" What struck me immediately was the leather-bound planner tucked under his arm. Something I'd never seen him carry before. James had always been disorganized and spontaneous, the type to forget appointments and make plans on the fly. The planner seemed incongruous with the brother I knew. Dinner that evening was a traditional Parker family affair: roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and all the trimmings that Mom had prepared annually since we were children. I noticed that while I helped set the table, prepare the children's plates, and later clear dishes, James remained seated, engaged in conversation with Dad about football and local politics. Stephanie caught my eye as I took her plate, and I detected a flash of apologetic awareness. She started to rise. "Let me help." No, Mom interrupted. "You sit. You work so hard with those kids and your job. Hazel doesn't mind, do you, honey?" There it was. The familiar pattern reasserting itself without anyone even noticing. "Actually," I said, taking a deep breath, "I'd love Stephanie's company in the kitchen. If she wants to join me." Something in my tone must have registered because Mom looked momentarily surprised before nodding. Stephanie rose and followed me to the kitchen, where we worked side by side loading the dishwasher. "How are things?" I asked quietly. Stephanie sighed. "Busy. Overwhelming sometimes. The kids are wonderful but exhausting," I finished for her. She laughed softly. "Exactly. And James?" She trailed off, glancing toward the dining room. "Still expects the world to accommodate his schedule?" I suggested. Her eyes met mine with a flash of recognition. "You've noticed that too?" Before we could continue the conversation, James appeared in the doorway, that planner still in his hand. "Steph, can you take the kids up for their baths? I want to talk to Dad about something." She nodded automatically, but I caught a flicker of resignation in her expression. As James turned to leave, I heard him on his phone in the hallway. "Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to get her to commit tomorrow. It's all going according to plan." A chill ran through me. Whatever was in that planner, I had a sinking feeling it involved me. Later that night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling, I rehearsed Dr. Winter's advice again. "Your brother's poor planning does not constitute your emergency. You are allowed to say no without guilt." I fell asleep with those words echoing in my mind, but my dreams were filled with missed opportunities and obligations I couldn't escape. I woke to the sound of small feet pattering down the hallway and excited whispers outside my door. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, reflecting off the light dusting of snow that had fallen overnight, giving the world a pristine, magical quality that only happens on Christmas morning. "Should we wake Aunt Hazel?" Liam's voice carried through the door. Mom said to let her sleep, Emma responded with the seriousness of a 7-year-old tasked with an important responsibility. I smiled and called out, "I'm awake. You can come in." The door burst open, and my niece and nephew tumbled onto the bed in a flurry of flannel pajamas and bedhead. Their excitement was contagious, momentarily pushing aside my anxiety about what the day might hold. "Santa came," Liam announced, bouncing on the mattress. "There's presents everywhere." Emma, always slightly more reserved, added, "We waited as long as we could. Grandma's making cinnamon rolls." I hugged them both, inhaling the sweet scent of children's shampoo and the indescribable essence of Christmas morning anticipation. Well then, we better not keep Santa's presents waiting, should we? Downstairs, the living room had transformed into the chaotic Christmas scene familiar to any family with young children. Presents spilled from beneath the tree, stockings had been emptied across the sofa, and discarded pieces of wrapping paper already littered the floor despite the empty garbage bag Mom had optimistically placed nearby. My parents sat on the love seat, clutching coffee mugs and wearing the slightly dazed expressions of grandparents who had been up since dawn. Stephanie was cross-legged on the floor beside the tree, a Santa hat perched on her head and a notebook in hand, presumably to record gifts for thank-you notes later. And there was James, standing by the fireplace, looking unexpectedly alert and organized. He had his planner open and was checking something against his phone, an air of purposefulness about him that seemed out of character for Christmas morning. "Hazel's up," Emma announced. "Now we can do the big presents." Mom smiled at me. "Coffee's fresh in the kitchen, honey. Help yourself before the tornado continues." I made my way to the kitchen, pouring coffee into the mug that had been mine since high school, a handmade pottery piece with "World's Most Creative Sister" painted in wobbly letters, a gift from James when he was 10. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I returned, James was directing the gift distribution with unusual efficiency. "Emma, that big one in the back is for Grandpa." "Liam, careful with that, it's fragile." "Mom, here's one from me and Stephanie." He consulted his planner between directions, making small check marks inside. I caught Stephanie's eye, and she shrugged slightly, seeming as confused by this new, organized James as I was. The morning progressed with the typical Christmas chaos, exclamations over gifts, the assembling of toys that required engineering degrees, and the consumption of far too many cinnamon rolls. Throughout it all, James maintained his strange new efficiency, occasionally disappearing to make phone calls and returning to make more check marks in his planner. After most of the presents had been opened, James suddenly clapped his hands. "Almost forgot. I have a special gift for you, Hazel." He retrieved a flat, rectangular package from behind the tree and handed it to me with a satisfied smile. "This is going to make everything so much easier for all of us." The phrasing sent warning signals through my body, but I maintained a pleasant expression as I unwrapped the gift. Inside was a personalized wall calendar, professionally printed with family photos decorating each month. "It's lovely," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of the photos. Many featuring moments with Emma and Liam that I treasured. "Look closer," James urged, his excitement palpable. "Open it up and check out the dates." I flipped the calendar open to January and then felt my stomach drop. Nearly every weekend had been filled in with neat annotations: babysitting Emma and Liam, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., kids sleepover at Aunt Hazel's, cover for Stephanie's night shift. Flipping through the months with increasing disbelief, I saw that the pattern continued through June. My entire spring had been scheduled, without my knowledge or consent. "What is this?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. James beamed, completely misreading my reaction. "Steph and I have amazing news. We've been accepted into that exclusive professional development program I told Dad about. It's going to be incredible for our careers, weekend intensive sessions for 6 months. The networking alone will be worth it." That's great," I stammered, still staring at the calendar where my life had been parceled out without my input. "The best part," James continued enthusiastically, "is that we've solved the childcare issue. You're always saying how you want to spend more time with the kids, so this works out perfectly. I've scheduled everything already, even coordinated with your work calendar by checking with your assistant." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You contacted my assistant?" "Just to confirm your schedule," he said dismissively. "Don't worry, I told her it was a surprise." "A surprise," I echoed faintly. Dad clapped James on the shoulder. "This is exactly the kind of initiative I've been talking about, son. Taking your career to the next level while keeping family a priority. Well done." Mom was nodding approvingly. "And the kids will love all that special time with Aunt Hazel." I glanced at Stephanie, expecting to see the same enthusiasm, but her expression was complex. Relief mingled with what looked surprisingly like guilt. She met my eyes briefly before looking away. "So it's settled," James announced, turning back to his planner and making another check mark. "The program starts the second weekend of January. I've already told the kids they'll be having regular fun weekends with Aunt Hazel." Emma looked up from her new doll with a smile. "Daddy says we can bake cookies every Saturday." Liam nodded vigorously. "And go to the science museum." The weight of their expectations, on top of James's presumption, felt suffocating. 20 years of always saying yes, of putting others' needs before my own, pressed down on me. "I need some air," I said abruptly, setting the calendar aside and standing. "Just need a minute." I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door and stepped onto the front porch, gulping the cold winter air like someone surfacing from underwater. Snow had begun falling again in large, lazy flakes that melted instantly on my flushed face. In my mind, I heard Dr. Winter's calm voice: "Your initial response to boundary violations doesn't need to be perfect. You can take time to process your feelings before responding." I closed my eyes, counting breaths as I'd practiced in therapy. 10 minutes, I promised myself. 10 minutes to feel the anger, the resentment, and the hurt. Then I would go back inside and find the words to finally change this pattern. When I re-entered the house, the living room had been tidied somewhat, with most of the wrapping paper corralled into garbage bags. The sounds of kitchen activity suggested breakfast preparations were underway. I hung my coat, squared my shoulders, and followed the noise. The kitchen was warm and fragrant with the scent of bacon and coffee. Mom stood at the stove flipping pancakes, while Dad arranged a fruit platter at the counter. Stephanie was setting the table, and the kids were coloring new Christmas pictures at the breakfast nook. James sat at the island scrolling through his phone, that planner open beside him. "There she is," Mom said cheerfully. "Feel better? You looked a little flushed earlier." "Just needed some fresh air," I replied, moving to the coffee pot to refill my mug. The mundane action helped steady my nerves. "So," James said without looking up from his phone, "I was thinking we should go over the details of the kids' schedules over breakfast. Emma has ballet on Saturdays at 11, but we figured you could take her since it's on your way from Boston anyway." The casual presumption in his tone, as if my agreement were a foregone conclusion, ignited something in me. I took a careful sip of coffee, then set the mug down deliberately. "James," I said quietly but firmly, "I need to talk to you about this calendar." "Right," he nodded, still focused on his screen. "We should coordinate on whether you'll pick them up Friday nights or Saturday mornings. Fridays probably work better for everyone." I took a deep breath. "No, that's not what I mean. I can't commit to watching Emma and Liam every weekend for 6 months." The kitchen seemed to still. James finally looked up from his phone, confusion crossing his features. "What do you mean?" "We've already been accepted to the program. It's all arranged." "You arranged it," I clarified, working to keep my voice level. "Without asking me." "But you're always available to help with the kids," he said, as if explaining something obvious. "You don't have a family of your own to worry about." The dismissal of my life, my work, my friendships, my personal time, as less valuable than his stung like a physical blow. "I have a life, James. I have a career, friends, commitments. Things that matter to me." Mom stepped away from the stove, spatula in hand. "Hazel, honey, I'm sure we can work this out. Your brother has a wonderful opportunity here. And I'm happy for him," I said, turning to her. "But that doesn't mean I can rearrange my entire life around his schedule." "It's not like you have kids," James interjected, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "Your time isn't as valuable." The room fell silent. Even Emma and Liam looked up from their coloring, sensing the tension. "Not as valuable," I repeated, each word deliberate. 20 years of accumulated frustration crystallized in that moment. "Let me tell you about my not as valuable time, James. I gave up art school, my dream, to stay local when you were having problems as a teenager. I've canceled dates, missed friends' weddings, postponed vacations, and rearranged my work schedule countless times to accommodate your needs. James looked genuinely surprised. That was years ago. And you never said you minded watching the kids. Because I love Emma and Liam, I said, glancing at my niece and nephew who were watching with wide eyes. But loving them doesn't mean I should sacrifice every weekend for half a year without even being consulted. Dad cleared his throat. Hazel, it's Christmas. Maybe we should discuss this later. We're always putting it off, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. That's how we got here. I'm tired of being the family's safety net without anyone considering what I might need or want. James's expression hardened. So you're saying you won't help us? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, James? The question came out sharper than I intended. Well, He faltered, then rallied. We've included you in family events, made you part of the kids' lives. Those aren't favors, I said. That's normal family relationship stuff. When have you ever rearranged your life to help me with something important? Mom stepped between us. Kids, why don't you take your new coloring books to the living room? Grandpa will put on a Christmas movie. Dad nodded, ushering Emma and Liam out despite their protests that they wanted to stay. Once they were gone, James leaned forward. I don't understand why you're being so selfish. This program could mean a promotion for both Stephanie and me. It's not selfish to have boundaries, I said, the therapy phrases I'd rehearsed finally coming to me. I'm happy to help sometimes, but I can't commit to every weekend for 6 months. So what are we supposed to do? James demanded. Childcare would cost a fortune. The same thing every other parent does, I suggested. Make arrangements that don't depend entirely on one person's sacrifice. Stephanie, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. She's right, James. James turned to her, betrayal flashing across his face. What? I told you we should have asked her before committing to the program, Stephanie said quietly. It wasn't fair to assume. I can't believe this, James muttered. My own family turning against me when I'm trying to better our lives. No one is turning against you, I said, trying to de-escalate. I'm just asking to be treated with basic consideration. Consideration? James's voice rose. Do you know what I had to do to get us into this program? The strings I pulled? I even told the Andersons you'd watch their kids some weekends too since they're in the same program. The revelation that he'd volunteered my services to friends without my knowledge was too much. In my shock, I jerked my arm and knocked over my coffee mug. The dark liquid spread across the kitchen island, soaking into James's open planner. Now look what you've done, he exclaimed, jumping up to rescue his planner. I'm sorry about the coffee, I said automatically. But I'm not sorry for finally standing up for myself. The kitchen fell into an uncomfortable silence broken only by the sound of James angrily blotting his planner with napkins. I need a minute, I said, turning to leave the room. As I headed upstairs to my childhood bedroom, I pulled out my phone and texted my friend Allison, finally said no to James. World didn't end but Christmas might. Her reply came seconds later, proud of you. Stand your ground. Call if you need backup. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of confrontation, but underneath the discomfort was a new feeling, something like relief. Christmas dinner preparations began in a cloud of tension. Mom busied herself with the turkey, methodically checking its temperature and basting it every 30 minutes as if the routine could restore normality to the day. Dad retreated to his time-honored holiday tradition of watching basketball while occasionally venturing into the kitchen to sample whatever was available. I found myself peeling potatoes alongside Stephanie, who worked in silence for several minutes before speaking. I want you to know, she said quietly, I did tell James he should talk to you before making all these plans. I glanced toward the living room to ensure James wasn't within earshot. Why didn't he? She sighed. He said you'd never said no before, so why would you start now? She looked embarrassed. I should have pushed harder. The casual entitlement of James's assumption stung, but I appreciated Stephanie's honesty. It's not your responsibility to manage my relationship with my brother. Still, she said, I've benefited from your generosity too. I should have been more mindful of how much we ask of you. Before I could respond, Mom approached with a forced brightness. Hazel, would you mind setting the dining room table with the good china? It's Christmas, after all. The subtext was clear, it's Christmas, so please drop this uncomfortable boundary setting and return to your usual accommodating self. I nodded and moved to the cabinet where the special occasion dishes lived. As I carried stacks of plates to the dining room, I heard my father's voice from the doorway. Your brother's always been high-strung, he said, as if that explained everything. He doesn't mean to take advantage. I carefully placed the plates around the table. I know he doesn't mean to, Dad. But he still does. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Your mother and I just want a peaceful Christmas. Can't this wait until tomorrow? That's the thing about boundaries, I said, recalling Dr. Winter's words. If you only enforce them when it's convenient for everyone else, they're not really boundaries. He frowned slightly, but nodded. You've changed since you started that therapy. Yes, I agreed. I'm learning to value myself the way I value everyone else in this family. He seemed about to say more when James appeared in the doorway, his expression determinately casual. Everything okay in here? He asked, though his tense posture suggested he knew exactly what we had been discussing. Just getting ready for dinner, Dad replied, retreating to the neutrality of holiday preparations. James lingered after Dad left. Mom says dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. He paused, then added, I've been thinking about the program situation. I straightened, giving him my full attention. Yes? I think I found a compromise, he said, a hint of his usual confidence returning. What if you just took the kids every other weekend instead of every weekend? That would be much more reasonable, right? The fact that he still didn't understand the fundamental issue was staggering. James, the problem isn't the frequency. It's that you made these plans assuming my time was yours to allocate without even asking me. He frowned. But you're their aunt. Don't you want to be involved in their lives? Of course I do, I said, frustrated by his deliberate misunderstanding. But being involved doesn't mean being your on-call childcare service. Fine, he said tightly. So what would work for you? 1 weekend a month? We really need this program, Hazel. I understand that, I said, trying to meet him halfway. And I'm happy to help sometimes, when I can. But I need you to ask, not tell. And I need you to respect that sometimes I'll say no because I have my own priorities. James's phone chimed with a text, and he glanced at it. His expression shifted from frustration to something more calculating. Actually, I need to talk to you about something else too. I've been speaking with Harris at your company, he's in the program as well. I froze. Harris Davis was a colleague in the marketing department who'd been openly resentful of my recent promotion to creative director. You know Harris? We play basketball at the same gym, James said with a shrug. Anyway, when I mentioned you'd be helping with childcare, he mentioned that big Meyer account you're supposed to lead in February. He was concerned about conflicts with the timing. A cold feeling spread through my chest. What did you tell him? James at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I might have said you'd already arranged to pass the project to him since you'd be busy with family obligations. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The Meyer account was the largest our firm had landed in years, and leading it was a key part of my new role, one I'd worked incredibly hard to earn. You told Harris I was giving up the Meyer account? My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. I was trying to help, James insisted. You obviously can't manage a major work project and help us with the kids. I thought it made sense to clear your professional plate. Something in me snapped. All the therapy phrases, the careful boundary-setting language I'd rehearsed, evaporated in a surge of pure, white-hot anger. You had no right. My voice rose beyond my control. That account is mine. I earned it. I worked nights and weekends for months to land it while you were busy assuming I'd always be available to clean up your messes. James stepped back, startled by my vehemence. Hazel. Mom appeared in the doorway, alarmed. The children can hear you. But the dam had broken. 20 years of suppressed frustration poured out in a torrent I couldn't stop if I'd wanted to. I am done being this family's safety net. I continued, dimly aware that everyone had gathered in the dining room doorway. I'm done sacrificing my goals, my relationships, and my time because James can't be bothered to consider anyone but himself. I'm done with being told that my life matters less because I don't have children. I'm done with being made to feel guilty for wanting the basic respect of being asked before my time is allocated. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to wipe them away. I love Emma and Liam more than anything, but I will not teach them that their aunt exists solely to make their father's life more convenient. That's not love, that's exploitation. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's small voice broke it. Daddy, why is Aunt Hazel so mad? Her lip trembled, and guilt surged through me for upsetting her on Christmas. James looked stunned, as if he genuinely couldn't comprehend how his actions had led to this moment. Hazel, you're overreacting. I was trying to help. No, Stephanie interrupted, moving to stand beside me. She's not overreacting. She's finally reacting after years of being taken for granted. She turned to James. We need to figure out childcare that doesn't depend entirely on your sister. James looked betrayed. You're taking her side? It's not about sides, Stephanie said firmly. It's about what's right. My parents exchanged glances, clearly at a loss for how to handle this disruption to their carefully maintained family dynamic. I need some space, I said, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline of confrontation was fading, leaving me drained. Without waiting for a response, I walked past my stunned family and out the back door. In the yard stood the old oak tree with the treehouse my father had built when we were children. On autopilot, I headed toward it and climbed the weathered ladder, seeking refuge in the one place that had always been mine. Inside, the treehouse was smaller than I remembered but surprisingly well maintained. Dad had replaced the roof a few years back when Emma and Liam became old enough to use it. I sat on the wooden floor, drew my knees to my chest, and finally allowed myself to cry. I'm not sure how long I sat in the treehouse, watching through the small window as snow fell gently outside. The cold had begun to seep through my sweater when I heard the creak of someone climbing the ladder. I braced myself, expecting to see my mother's face appear with an expression of gentle reprimand about ruining Christmas dinner. Instead, Stephanie's blonde head emerged through the trapdoor, her cheeks flushed from the cold. In her hands were 2 steaming mugs. Peace offering, she said, passing one to me as she maneuvered into the small space. Hot chocolate with the tiny marshmallows. I had to hide them from Liam. I accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping my cold fingers around its warmth. Thanks. Stephanie settled across from me, looking around the treehouse with appreciation. This is nice. Much better than the refrigerator box fort my brothers used to make. A reluctant smile tugged at my lips. Dad built it the summer James broke his arm and couldn't play outside much. He used to hide up here and spy on the neighborhood with binoculars. That sounds like James, she said with a knowing laugh that quickly faded to something more serious. Hazel, I owe you an apology. I looked up from my hot chocolate, surprised. For what? For being complicit, she said simply. I've known for years that James takes advantage of your generosity. I'd benefited from it too, and I haven't done enough to change the pattern. Her candor was unexpected and touching. I took a sip of hot chocolate to give myself a moment to respond. You're not responsible for James's behavior. No, but I am responsible for mine, she replied. The truth is, those weekend courses were primarily James's idea. He presented it as a done deal, and I went along with it even though I knew it would put an impossible burden on you. She stared into her mug. I work 50-hour weeks as a nurse, come home to handle most of the childcare and housework, and I'm just exhausted all the time. The idea of weekends off felt like winning the lottery. I get that, I said softly, and I truly did. Stephanie had her own difficult dynamic with James. 2 months ago, she continued, I hit my own breaking point. James had agreed to take the kids for the day so I could attend a nursing conference. When I got home, the house was a disaster. The kids were still in pajamas at 4 p.m., and James was playing video games. He'd promised to handle everything but did the bare minimum. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I lost it. Much like you did downstairs. I told him things had to change, that I needed a true partner, not another child to manage. What happened? I asked. He actually listened, she said with a hint of surprise. He's been trying, in his James way. The planner was part of that. But instead of recognizing that we needed to solve our problems as a couple, he defaulted to his lifelong pattern of expecting you to fill the gaps. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, sipping our hot chocolate as the snow continued to fall outside. When I saw that calendar he made for you, Stephanie finally said, I recognized it immediately. It's the same feeling I've had for years, someone else deciding how my time should be spent without consulting me. I should have spoken up sooner today. You did speak up, I reminded her. That meant a lot. She smiled. I think we've both enabled James in different ways. Me by not demanding equal partnership, you by always being his safety net. So what do we do now? I asked. We set boundaries together, she said decisively. I'm going to tell James that if he wants to do this professional development program, we need to find proper childcare, perhaps share costs with other families in the program or adjust our budget. What we're not going to do is assume your time is our resource. She held up her mug for a toast. To boundaries? I clinked my mug against hers. To boundaries. As we finished our hot chocolate, Stephanie shared more about her own struggles with James's entitled behavior and her efforts to change their dynamic. I found myself seeing her not just as my brother's wife or my niece and nephew's mother, but as a woman navigating her own challenging path. We should probably go back inside, she eventually said, glancing at her watch. The turkey's probably overcooked by now. Mom would never allow that, I laughed. She's probably been maintaining the perfect temperature while having a complete internal meltdown about the disrupted dinner schedule. As we prepared to climb down, Stephanie placed a hand on my arm. For what it's worth, I think what you did was brave. It would have been easier to say yes again and resent us in private. It didn't feel brave, I admitted. It felt terrifying. That's how you know it matters, she said. We descended the ladder and walked back toward the house, where warm light spilled from the windows. Before we reached the door, Stephanie turned to me again. Whatever happens in there, know you have an ally now. Inside, the house was surprisingly calm. The dining room table was fully set, the turkey resting on the counter. Emma and Liam were helping Dad place name cards at each place setting, their earlier distress apparently forgotten in the importance of the task. James stood in the living room, staring out the window. He turned when we entered, his expression uncharacteristically subdued. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Stephanie gave my arm a supportive squeeze before moving to help Mom in the kitchen, giving us privacy. I'm listening, I said, remaining by the door to maintain some physical space between us. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of our father when he was uncomfortable. I called Harris. Told him I'd misspoken about the Meyer account, that you hadn't agreed to any changes. It wasn't the opening I'd expected. Thank you for doing that. He nodded, clearly struggling with what to say next. Stephanie and I had a talk while you were outside. She helped me see some things more clearly. Such as? I prompted when he paused. Such as the fact that I've been treating you like an extension of my own resources rather than as a person with your own life and priorities, he said, the words coming out with the slightly rehearsed quality of someone repeating a concept they're still digesting. And that I've been doing it most of our lives. I remained silent, giving him space to continue. I'm not good at this, he admitted. Acknowledging when I'd been selfish. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. But I am sorry, Hazel. I really am. I didn't see what I was doing because it was so normal to me. You've always been there, always said yes. That's on me too, I acknowledged. I should have set boundaries years ago. A ghost of his usual smile appeared. You're setting them now. Pretty effectively, I'd say. Better late than never, I replied. He gestured to the sofa. Can we sit? I have a proposition for you, a real one this time, not something I've already decided for you. Cautiously, I moved to the couch and sat, leaving space between us. James took a deep breath. Stephanie and I still want to do the professional development program. But you're right that we need to figure out childcare that doesn't depend entirely on you. So here's what I'm thinking. We'll hire a regular weekend sitter for most of the schedule. But if, and only if, you're willing, maybe you could take the kids one weekend a month. On your terms, when it works for your schedule. It was such a reasonable request, the kind of normal family give and take that should have been our standard all along, that I felt a surprising surge of emotion. I'd be happy to have them one weekend a month, I said. I love spending time with Emma and Liam. I know you do, he said quietly. And they adore you. Not because you're convenient childcare, but because you're an amazing aunt who sees them as individuals. The validation of what I had always tried to be for his children, a loving presence, not just a babysitter, touched me deeply. There's something else, James added, looking uncomfortable again. I saw a text from your boss on Harris's phone. Apparently, Harris has been trying to undermine you since your promotion. My big brother instincts kicked in, and I nearly texted him back something unprofessional. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of affection for the protective impulse. What stopped you? The realization that you don't need me to fight your battles, he said with surprising insight. You're more than capable of handling Harris yourself. Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready, if you two are. She trailed off, clearly uncertain about our emotional state. James stood and offered me his hand. Truce for Christmas dinner? I took his hand and let him pull me up. Truce. As we moved toward the dining room, James added quietly, but this conversation isn't over. We have years of patterns to unravel. One day at a time, I agreed as we joined the family at the table. The meal wasn't the picture-perfect Christmas dinner Mom had envisioned. There were moments of awkward silence and careful navigation around sensitive topics. But underneath the lingering tension was something new, the first tentative steps toward a more balanced family dynamic. When Emma asked if I would help her build her new Lego set the next day, I smiled and said, I'd love to, knowing that my yes came from genuine choice rather than obligation. 3 months later, I stood in my Boston apartment before an easel, adding final touches to a landscape painting of the view from my childhood treehouse. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the space I had recently rearranged to make room for this rekindled passion. A timer on my phone chimed, reminding me of my scheduled FaceTime with Emma and Liam. I wiped my hands on a paint-stained cloth and moved to the kitchen table where my laptop waited. Within moments, my niece and nephew's faces filled the screen, both talking excitedly over each other. Aunt Hazel. I lost another tooth. Emma announced, pulling her lip down to display the gap. The tooth fairy brought her $5, Liam added with a mixture of awe and envy. I told her she should pull out all her teeth and get rich. I laughed, settling into the chair. $5 is pretty generous. In my day, we got quarters. That's because you're ancient, Emma stated matter-of-factly, causing me to laugh again. Ancient at 32? Just wait until you're my age, kiddo. We chatted for 20 minutes about school projects, Liam's soccer team, and Emma's science fair experiment. The ease of our interaction, free from the underlying tension that had characterized so many of our past visits, felt like a gift. As our call wound down, Stephanie appeared in the background. Kids, time to set the table for dinner. Say goodbye to Aunt Hazel. After they had rushed off with hurried goodbyes, Stephanie took their place on screen. Hey there. How's the painting going? I turned the laptop to show her my work in progress. Coming along. It feels good to create something just because I want to. It's beautiful, she said sincerely. You're really talented, Hazel. Thanks, I replied, feeling a warmth at the recognition of this long-neglected part of myself. How are the weekend courses going? Challenging but worth it, she answered. The childcare co-op with the other program families is working well. The kids actually love it, they've made new friends and barely notice we're gone. The childcare solution had been Stephanie's idea, pooling resources with 4 other families in the program to hire 2 professional sitters who supervised all the children together in rotating homes. It cost each family far less than individual childcare while providing the kids with a consistent social group. And how about next weekend, she asked. The kids are counting down the days until they come to your place. Everything's ready, I assured her. I've got tickets for the aquarium on Saturday and all the ingredients for our famous Sunday morning pancakes. This would be the 3rd month of our new arrangement, Emma and Liam staying with me 1 weekend per month, entirely on my terms. The difference in how it felt was profound. Without resentment clouding the experience, I found myself fully present with them, genuinely excited for our time together rather than subconsciously counting the hours until I could reclaim my space. James wants to say hi, Stephanie said, and a moment later my brother appeared on screen. Hey sis, he greeted me with a slightly sheepish smile that had become his standard expression with me, a visual acknowledgement of our ongoing work to rebuild our relationship. Hey yourself, I replied. How's the shoulder? He'd mentioned a minor injury from basketball the last time we spoke. Much better. Physical therapy is helping. He paused, then added, so I wanted to run something by you, but I want to be clear that this is a real question, not an assumption. I appreciated the careful phrasing, evidence of his efforts to change old patterns. Go ahead. Mom and Dad's anniversary is coming up in May. I was thinking about organizing a surprise weekend for them. Maybe a bed and breakfast in the Berkshires. If you're interested in contributing, great, but absolutely no pressure. 6 months ago, James would have simply informed me of my assigned role in whatever plan he'd already finalized. The change wasn't perfect, but it was significant. Actually, that sounds nice, I said. Send me the details, and I'll let you know what I can chip in. Will do. He hesitated, then added, I owe you an apology about something else too. Remember that job opportunity you mentioned back in January? The one in New York? I nodded. A senior creative position with a prestigious agency had opened up, and I'd mentioned considering it during one of our cautious phone conversations. I realized I never actually asked you about it. How did that turn out? I didn't take it, I said. After a lot of consideration, I decided I'm happy where I am right now. The Meyer campaign is going well, and I've negotiated for some additional creative freedom on upcoming projects. What I didn't add was that the decision had been entirely mine, not influenced by family obligations or guilt, but based solely on what I wanted for my own career. The realization that I could make major life choices without factoring in James's childcare needs had been profoundly liberating. I'm glad it worked out, he said, and I believed he meant it. Listen, I should get back to dinner prep. But I wanted to say, I'm really proud of you, Hazel. Not just for your work stuff, but for standing up for yourself. With me, especially. It couldn't have been easy. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected emotion. It wasn't, I admitted. But it was necessary. After we said our goodbyes, I closed the laptop and returned to my painting, reflecting on the past 3 months. The Christmas confrontation had been painful but transformative, setting in motion changes that rippled through all my relationships. My parents had struggled initially with the shift in family dynamics. Mom still occasionally slipped into mediator mode, trying to smooth over conflicts before they could fully emerge. Dad had been more receptive, especially after I shared how their different expectations of James and me had affected my life choices. "I never meant to make you feel less important," he'd said during a private conversation in February. "I guess I just thought you were the strong one who didn't need as much attention." "Being strong doesn't mean not having needs," I'd replied, a concept that seemed to genuinely give him pause. With James, progress came in fits and starts. Old patterns didn't disappear overnight, but each time they emerged, we addressed them more directly. The balance of give and take in our relationship shifted gradually towards something more equitable. My relationship with Stephanie had deepened into a friendship independent of my brother. We'd begun meeting for lunch every few weeks when her nursing schedule allowed, conversations flowing easily between parenting challenges, career aspirations, and personal interests. Perhaps most significantly, I'd started dating again. Michael had moved on, understandably, but a new relationship had developed with Alex, a graphic designer I'd met through a mutual friend. 3 months in, it was still new and tender, but it felt different from previous relationships. When he asked about my weekend plans or suggested a spontaneous trip, I could answer honestly based on what I wanted rather than what family obligations would allow. The following Saturday morning found me at the New England Aquarium with Emma and Liam, their faces pressed against the glass of the giant ocean tank as a sea turtle glided past. I snapped a photo, capturing their expressions of wonder. "Aunt Hazel," Emma said thoughtfully as we watched tropical fish dart through coral formations, "Dad said you're teaching him to be more considerate." I glanced down, surprised by her perception. "Did he say that?" She nodded. "He said he used to take you for granted." "For granted," I corrected with a smile. "That's it," she confirmed. "He said now he knows everyone's time is valuable, even if they don't have kids." From the mouths of babes. "That's a good lesson for everyone to learn," I said, touched that James was not only acknowledging the change to me but explaining it to his children. Later that evening, after pizza and a movie, with the kids tucked into the guest room bed, I received a text from James, just checking in. "Everything going okay?" 6 months ago, he wouldn't have checked, assuming all was well unless told otherwise. I texted back a photo of the kids asleep surrounded by stuffed animals with the caption, "Perfect. See you tomorrow at 4. His response came quickly, "Thanks for this weekend. We know it's a choice, not an obligation." That makes it mean more. I set down my phone, struck by the truth of those words. In choosing to spend time with Emma and Liam because I wanted to, not because I felt trapped by expectation, I found more joy in our relationship than ever before. In setting boundaries with my family, I hadn't pushed them away as I'd feared, I'd created space for more authentic connection. The journey of the past few months hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations, painful realizations, and the discomfort of disrupting decades-old patterns. But standing in my apartment that evening, I felt a sense of peace that had previously eluded me. True family support, I'd learned, wasn't about sacrifice and martyrdom. It was about mutual respect, clear communication, and the understanding that love doesn't require the erasure of personal boundaries, it flourishes because of them. The next morning, as I helped Emma and Liam mix pancake batter and debated the merits of chocolate chips versus blueberries, we opted for both. My phone rang with a FaceTime call from James and Stephanie. "Just wanted to say good morning," Stephanie said when I answered, propping the phone against the fruit bowl so the kids could see their parents. "Daddy, we made Aunt Hazel's special pancakes," Liam announced, proudly displaying a mixing spoon coated in batter. "Save some for us next time," James replied with a laugh. As I watched them chat, flour dusting the counter and morning sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt a profound gratitude for this messy, imperfect, evolving family of mine. The journey to healthier relationships hadn't ended, it would be ongoing, but we had taken the crucial first steps. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your time and generosity for granted? How did you find the courage to speak up, and what was the result? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's It's an act of self-respect that ultimately creates space for more authentic and loving relationships. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I wish you the strength to honor your own needs while still showing love to those who matter most.